Hi, welcome to the Open Space with Aura. If you like what you hear or see on this channel, please subscribe and spread the word to your friends. This channel was opened maybe half a year ago with one sole purpose: to have an inspiring conversations with people who inspire me. Please don't hesitate and leave your comments under the videos or reach out to me if you would like to be featured on this channel and have a conversation. Thank you for listening. Today's guest is a very unusual guest, and this guest is my brother. His name is Arkady, and it's hard for me to introduce my own brother and to be objective about it. So, Arkady, would you briefly introduce yourself?
Well, I'm your younger brother. I was showered with a lot of love and affection by you that I didn't always reciprocate when I was growing up, which left us with a lot of shared memories. And what can I say? I live in San Francisco. We live in different states, but we talk as often as we can, and we derive wisdom and humor from each other, sometimes more often, sometimes less often, and I've been looking forward to this.
And I'm a little bit nervous today because your occupation, you're an attorney, and I bet you will start your interrogation or cross-examination. So.
Well, I am not planning to sue you or charge you for anything, so I don't think you have anything to worry about.
Arkady,
So
what's on your mind? What's on your mind today?
Well, here's what's on my mind. You know, we often walk down memory lane comparing the past with the present, and I wanted to focus today on one very specific thing that changed about our world over the last 20 years, and that's the value, the use, the frequency of use of touch, of our tactile senses. And I wanted to get your perspective on how it affects our life, how it benefits us, how it harms us, and what possible solutions there are to the problems that it created. So let me start with the first theme of where the touch has changed in our lives. We went from pictures, from sitting with a grandma and looking over the album and flipping pages and thinking about things and remembering things, to posting things on Facebook and Instagram and browsing quickly, never really stopping for too long, certainly not sitting with someone and looking over those pictures with that much attention. We went from handwritten letters to emails and text messages. We went from postcards and thank you cards to generic emails. Did we replace quality with quantity? Are things really worse today than they were before in that regard?
I think we replaced process with immediacy. And I talked about it a little bit with my previous guests, Alex Zubatov and Dr. Joshua Mitchell. We lost appreciation of slowly unfolding things, and slowly unfolding things carry elements of surprise and intrigue and certain anticipation. Just think about it as an example. Somebody writes you a letter, a love letter, or any letter, and you're waiting for arrival of this letter. Sometimes it takes weeks, and you anticipate, and then you cannot wait. The excitement builds, right? And then you receive this and you slowly reading it. So same as going through the pages of the album, it brings back memories, it brings it back to life. Again, it's a process. So if you ask me what touch is, what's the value of touch, it touches everything. Literally everything. Everything that makes us human. That's how we interact on any levels. We can go through all different aspects of it.
Specific question to you. You know, you've lived a long life, you've dated, you met men, you
Are you
flirted.
cueing that I'm old
No,
lady?
no, just an interesting life, not a long life. Let me rephrase. You've lived an interesting life, flirting, dating throughout in different countries. If you were to compare
How
the
you
way,
know? How you know?
I have sources. I have sources. So if you were to compare the way that women were approached before, where the guy would check them out, would approach them, would talk to them, if he's lucky enough, would get their phone number, she would pull out a napkin, write her phone number on a napkin, or he would write it on a piece of paper. He would put it in his pocket, versus today, you know, give me your Instagram, here is my phone, put your phone number in there. Does this difference take away from the spark, from the romance, or are we just too old and we miss things the way they were in the past?
Well, I will bring comparison. If you enjoy French cinema, so what you're describing is like being part of that French cinema, French movie versus some Hollywood movie.
Okay.
It has certain unforgettable nuances, like writing on the napkin. When these things happen, you go through whole spectrum of emotions: shyness, hesitation, being self-conscious, being doubtful, being afraid, being vulnerable. And all the spectrum of emotion makes one feel fully alive.
Mm-hmm.
Fully alive, that's what it is. And also putting oneself at risk of possibly being heartbroken, right? How what's the right way to say? Broken-hearted or heartbroken?
Heartbroken.
Heartbroken, but it's part of being alive.
So we could say that the quality of life can be measured by the number of emotions and the intensity of emotions that you experience. So if you don't experience fear and anxiety or joy of anticipation, that determines the quality of your life, right?
I think so. Also, it determines you learning about yourself in this process and growing as a human being, and also learning about other human beings around through this process.
As someone who has been teaching a lot in person and a lot virtually, is it all gloom and doom for virtual learning? Is it much inferior, or things are not so bad? Or would you say that being in person, teaching in person, being present next to each other is always clearly superior?
First of all, I don't put myself in a category of technology denialist. I don't deny huge benefits of technology. And thanks to technology, during last year of COVID, people could still continue lessons, and people were desperate for this one-on-one communication, not in person, but at least seeing a face of a person, where in real life, you could see only a mask. On the screen, ironically, you could see a face and gestures of real person. So ironically, digital became more personal than real life, that became dehumanized because everybody would wear masks and stay away, far away from each other. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just stating the reality. Mm-hmm. But absolutely uncomparable, of course, nothing like person-to-person contact. Absolutely nothing compares to that.
Okay. I imagine you would say that. Now, one of the saddest things that I think is going on is that the present generation has no point of reference with the past. They didn't live when we lived, So they don't know what they're missing out. And if they don't know what they're missing out, how could they demand more than what they have today? Would you agree with that? And if so, what is the solution for the younger generation?
Well, I constantly keep thinking about it. It puzzles me. It's always on my mind because it's not just we who had point of reference, but all previous generations, whole history had this point of reference. And it's the first time that it's probably first generation that is born into the digital world and they don't know anything before. And it seems to me that the only solution, we cannot go back to the past, but reintroducing the value of embodied connection, of reintroducing the value of real touch, of real communication, of in real life, in real-time contact, by any possible means. Reintroducing, that's what I'm trying to do in my work with. What else can we do? We cannot compete with technology. We cannot go back again, but at least we can reintroduce the taste and the flavor, which is irreplaceable. And hopefully, once people taste that human connection, they will see the difference between real and the substitute, real and the fake.
Do you believe people should put more effort, despite having access to Zoom and internet, they should put more effort into seeing each other in person, especially if it's not hard?
I do believe that's the only way, but on the other hand, and here I want to ask you, in order to, I can say, yes, people should, but people should feel motivated to do so. So, and here is my question to you. Why do you see motivation from people to do so? Or you see, or maybe people afraid or feel insecure? So something should push people toward it. So how you see the problem?
You mean after COVID or in general?
Both.
Well, I thought that when things reopen, there will be an explosion and people will try to make up for all the lost time. I know it is happening in some places in the world, not here. Here, there is a sense of apathy and laziness and indifference. I hope it's going to go away with time and things will be more awake and more active. But yes, of course, you don't want anybody to see you because they're doing you a favor. Ideally, you want them to want to see you because they want to, and they want to spend time with you. After all, that's what friendship is, and that's what love is. What is love if not the desire being near each other, plus all those other things? Right.
But don't you think that if people conditioned for safety and comfort, it's hard for them to change 180 degrees their course if they've been conditioned for safety and comfort?
Well, there has to be some self-awareness and some conscious effort. There has to be a voice inside that's telling you, look, this is not enough. There is more to life than this. And you have to force yourself a little bit, just like you force yourself to go exercise, because you know that in the end, it's better for you. That doesn't mean you should be seeing everyone more often, but at least seeing the people you want to see in person. And I know for a fact, you could just see the euphoria on people's faces when they see each other in person, assuming they like each other. And it's far superior. Being next to each other is far superior than, anything else.
But it also carries a great risk of being hurt, of being rejected. So people, if you get used, right? If you grow up in this world, pre-digital world, right? Let's say, so you get used to be rejected, to have new interactions. So it's part to be brokenhearted, all of it. But if people never experience that, how to make that first step, it's terrifying. Even for, I see, I teach undergrads in a college, and even a few years ago, if we're comparing COVID, I don't know if it's related to COVID. I always think it's not one thing, but multiple factors that contribute into this. I can see a tendency, if before I would see boys and girls kind of talking to each other or just whispering or exchanging some notes, there was something going on, some energy going on in a classroom. Now people sit on the opposite sides of the classroom, and not because of social distancing, not because of that. And there's absolutely zero interaction and even zero eye contact, nothing. So I don't know, I wonder how it's in other places, but that's what I observe, and that saddens me.
I have a very simple answer. Practice makes perfect. And if you practice something bad, then it makes that bad perfect too. If you don't look at each other, if you're afraid of each other for a year and a half, it's not just going to go away just like this. When you lift whatever rules and restrictions, people are used to a certain lifestyle, and it's going to take a while to emerge out of it. And who's going to go first?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I thought that people are going to be so eager. Oh my God, we missed a year of our high school, college life. This is the most important year. Let's make up for it. Let's go crazy. Let's do everything twice as hard and twice as much as before. Obviously, I was wrong. And
how do you know, obviously, like I have my experience, but it's very limited experience of college campus. Again, maybe we're generalizing. I'm always cautious not to generalize. What are the experiences that you based your conclusion on?
Well, I'm talking regionally. We know that there was an explosion in Norway when restrictions lifted, huge celebrations. Israel is going crazy. We know some places did exactly what I expected everywhere to happen. The fact that here, I thought it should be a national holiday when you have some kind of reopening. Nothing, nobody cares. I thought there's going to be some kind of desire, this huge impulse to overcompensate for what has been lost. The fact that you're saying in your school you don't feel it, I'm not feeling it here in San Francisco. I think it says something about at least these two places, or about our region. And
so how you explain it? I'm just curious.
There is fear, for sure, and there is adaptation. We adapted to a new way of life. I agree with you. San Francisco never had a lot of eye contact. Now it's even less. I mean, it's so much easier for people not to look at each other because they're used to it. We've gotten used to not commuting less, doing things by Zoom, so people are less.
It's interesting because it's not just used to it, but also we have sort of official justification, so-called safety, so we can tell ourselves how we justify not looking, not making an effort, which always comes together with risk of seeking new contacts, right?
Yeah.
We can self-justify, which doesn't make it easier.
No. And, you know, it irritates the hell out of me when people say masks are not a big deal, because it is a big deal. It's your everyday experience. And, you know, I've been talking about masks. I know you got sick of me bringing it up because it is a big deal. It changes your every moment of your life when you're out. Are you surrounded by faces or you're surrounded by masks? In many cultures, you don't need to explain that. People feel exactly that. In many places, like here, for example, people say it's not a big deal. It's like a seatbelt. So different approach.
I can say it's, and by no means I'm an anti-masker. I think masks are good tool of protection in a crowded places, but I also don't understand the reasoning behind wearing mask outdoors. For example, I never understood that kind of reasoning. So I'm
No.
for. Mhm.
Regardless how you feel about them, to say that they're not a big deal, even if you're a big supporter, to say that we're not paying the price when we're surrounded by covered faces, that's just not true. If you're alive, if you're a human, you should see that it's not a small deal. But
I agree. So what I'm saying is, we should differentiate when mask is indeed a necessity and when mask is more damaging than the not wearing mask. So we have to be very selective, and there need to be some sort of moderacy about how we do that, and nuance. Again, I want to say nuance. But absolutely, I think the most damaging effect will be on children.
Yeah.
Because that's how they learn, especially in a young age, sensory learning, body language. And even for me, teaching in college where I cannot see faces of students, it makes it incredibly hard. So
normalizing something that's not normal might not be necessarily a good idea. I wanted to ask you about touch. There's more way to touch someone than by touching them physically. You know, I've been thinking about music. There's a beautiful piano behind you. Would you agree that playing music in front of someone or for someone is also in a way touching them?
Well, in a huge way, it moves a person. There's for reason the expression touching the heart or touching the spirit. It's not literally touching the heart, right? It's a metaphor. And for me, as a musician, I can say, interesting observation, self-observation, that I'm way less touched when I listen to music than when I actually physically play it with my own hands. So that's why I say touch is everything for me. And it starts with physical aspect of playing. And I would say very important step forward kind of into reclaiming the physical, the reality, is to engage in any sort of manual activity for children, for adults, playing an instrument, even playing sports, anything that involves real physical activity that involves engagement, sensory engagement with the real world. Let's put it this way. Cooking, not buying frozen prepackaged products, but actually going to the kitchen and cooking, touching food, touching the knife, being engaged in some sort of process, that you do something with your hands.
You know, I reminded me of something really sad that I recently thought about. So every moment, there are millions of people who are playing video games, who are watching all kinds of interesting or not interesting videos online, who are streaming, who are messaging on different forums, on different platforms. Those are the same millions of people that are not out hanging out in cafes and talking, or playing in children's playgrounds, or sitting in person at a movie theater or at a concert. I understand there's pluses and minuses because a lot of these people do all kinds of cool things online, but are we paying a high price by not having all these people out in person?
Very high price, and we don't even know how high it is. Very high price.
Difficult question. Is there a solution?
As I said, for adults, it have to be awareness. That's what you said, right? And effort. It takes an effort to go back into the real world. to go to cafe, to go to concert. It takes effort, it takes time, but the reward is immeasurable, right? But for parents with children, it's engaging in real life, okay, going to real playground and not being afraid to leave your children unsupervised. There's nothing like unsupervised play, and letting your children playing in the dirt, in the sand. And I would say we way too much sterilized our experience.
What do you mean by
Sterilized,
that? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
sanitized. That's the better word.
Sanitized. Okay.
Not sterilized, sanitized our experience, sanitized of emotion, for the sake of safety, and negative emotions too, all spectrum of emotion. We sanitized our relationship because we avoid conflict, but how we learn to find resolution of the conflict unless we confront each other, unless we get ourselves, not purposely going to the fight, right? But conflict is part of the human drama, if you will. And that's how we engage with each other. So I would say it's excitement and intrigue and thrill of the human drama that is desperately missing and have to be reclaimed by people themselves. Nobody will do it for us.
Is it fair to say that conflict is also a touch, because you're being touched maybe in an unpleasant but necessary way when you have a conflict with someone?
Yes, but absolutely touched, and sometimes you're hurt, you're upset, you're angry, but these are all human emotions. And we have to filter it constantly with ourselves, with the partner, or with the person we're in conflict with, and look for solutions, look for compromise. And it creates certain tools of adaptability. That's how we develop adaptability. We have to adapt, right? By solving conflicts, we adapt to more and more and more, and it enriches us, right?
You also understand each other better and become closer when you resolve a conflict.
Absolutely. But here I want to bring another thing. What bothers me is the disappearance of humor. Absolutely, the humorlessness everywhere around, due to different factors, political, social, and we're not going to get into that. But one of the very powerful tools of conflict resolution is laughter. It's like, look at you and me, we fight very often, right, over the phone. We disagree strongly on many things, but most of our conversations end up like you say a joke or I say a joke, and we start laughing together.
Also, you're very flexible. The chances of you changing your mind or having some kind of modification to your opinion is quite likely. So I know that if I call you next time after we disagree, we're going to disagree less. So yeah.
Yes, I do change my mind, because that's I call it part of being adaptive to whatever change happens to me. I don't cling to any opinion of mine, and I'm willing and ready to change my mind if something seems convincing to me at the moment, knowing that tomorrow there might be more convincing information coming my way and I will change my mind again. But that's also exciting process.
If only more people had this strategy or had this way of thinking, then I think we would be way further along in our attempts to resolve all kinds of problems. It sounds so simple and so obvious, yet it's missing. Going back to humor, is humor also a way of touching someone?
Absolutely. Yes, it's, let me put it this way. Humor is a way of disarming somebody, of taking down defenses, unnecessarily defense, of breaking the ice. Genuine humor, it's the best icebreaker between people. Absolutely.
Isn't it fascinating that you can say the same thing, the same joke, and one person is going to be offended. They will go, oh, I can't believe you. And the other one would be laughing hysterically.
And I would say that's the first sign. If you ask me, how do you find your kind of person? Most likely it's the person who don't get offended by your jokes.
Because that means that they're on the same channel somewhere higher. They're thinking along the same ways about certain things the way you are, and therefore you can make fun of the same things.
Absolutely. Humor is the finest frequency. That's why it's so hard to grasp it and describe it and categorize it, how we respond to humor. If you even look into some psychological research, it's hard to get into it. Right? But
Yeah.
there's nothing like if you really laugh at the same things or you have same reaction at the same joke, nothing bonds people. I wouldn't say nothing, but it's one of the very strong bonding factors between people. I believe so, at least for me.
Is there any other type of touch that we haven't covered that's important, that we missed?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I don't know if it's considered touch. You know, more and more people go to Best Buy, they buy these large TV screens, and fewer people go to a movie theater. Is being present next to someone who you don't even know, but just being in a crowd of strangers in front of a big screen. Is that also the type of touch that's missing when you're in the comfort of your own home in front of a big screen? And is that touch very important, or is just a stage in our evolution that's not that important?
To be honest, I never went to Best Buy.
Okay.
But I'll give you a different example.
Yeah.
When you probably traveled in Europe on a train, and you probably experience when you sit on a train and you just start random conversation, or on a plane, or you start random conversation with a stranger, absolute stranger, and you just share everything about yourself without knowing a person, and they do the same. And it's very liberating, maybe because you know that you will not be judged, that they don't want anything from you, but you can engage in incredibly deep conversation with absolute stranger. And I wish more of these things could happen, but it does happen in a crowded place. Well, train is a crowded, plane is a crowded place. Kind of unexpected encounters, I would say. Yeah, unexpected encounters. So we decrease the chance of these unexpected encounters. Yeah. By not going out, by wearing masks, it decreases more and more our chances to meet that unexpected something which might change our life.
Well,
forever.
it's also a matter of taste, right? Some people don't want those unexpected encounters. They just want to live as far from everyone as possible and to be left alone, right?
Yes. Yeah. And nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah. It really depends on
Depends on the person. Yeah. But
do you
yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that this is an opportunity? I want to try to put a positive spin on things, that the fact that maybe so much of the touch has been taken away, this is the opportunity for the few people that are out there to stand out from the rest. Because I noticed myself that I appreciate now any type of handwritten thank you note that I on occasion get. I appreciate it so much more than I could ever imagine. Wow, somebody picked up a pen, they wrote a couple of words for me. It wasn't pre-printed. And do you think people appreciate these types of gestures more now than before because they're more rare.
Again, I cannot talk on behalf of everybody. I definitely do. I definitely choose handmade presents for my friends, and I appreciate handwritten, everything handmade, from food to written notes to cursive writing, which I was shocked to learn recently that children don't learn writing cursive at school, which I think will be huge negative impact on brain development and on motor skill development, but that's a different story. Yes, but I think we should just try to look around and find beauty in you. Stop taking anything for granted. At least me, I go out, I appreciate every bit of real, anything real. Whether it will be real flower, I don't want to be cheesy, but I don't care. Why not to be cheesy? Real flower, real person, a smile of a person, and having conversation in a coffee shop or anything, I don't take it for granted. Because one day it can be taken away from us.
Like we already know. That's wonderful. One more aspect, I cannot explain this, maybe you can. The one more way to touch someone is, you're looking at them or you're hearing them. A few people told me that they believe that radio, speaking on the phone, hearing someone's voice is actually more intense and more intimate than hearing and seeing at the same time, whether on TV or, let's say, like this on Zoom. Do you believe that there is something to hearing another person only without seeing them, something that's even in a way more intimate and qualitatively superior to hearing and seeing?
It could be because it provokes your imagination, because you hear the voice and at the same time you imagine the face expression of that person or body language or certain gestures, but you don't see the person. So it leaves room for imagination, which is again very intriguing. Yes.
Okay, interesting. One obvious thing that I did not mention is, of course, digital books versus hardcover or soft cover books, real books. We know that generally our society shifted. We went from real books all the way to digital books. And now many people come back and say, you know what, I don't like digital. I want an actual book in my hand, right? So that's an obvious example. Where do you stand?
Well, I'm a wrong person to ask because I don't think I ever read a digital book.
Okay.
Simply because for me, book starts with the smell. I grew up, I still remember the strong smell of the old books with yellow pages, yellowish, old pages in a public library when I was like 6, and kind of that smell of old paper and dust. So for me, that's everything. I go to half-price bookstores or I go to old bookstores and I come and I smell books like crazy, like a mad person. So I answered your question already. It's touch, it's physically flipping the page or making notes or writing quotation, right? You remember how I used to write in the middle of the night certain quotes, paragraphs or sentences that would strike me that I wanted to think over and come back to. You cannot do that with digital thing. It's all this process again, or coming back to the previous chapter and flipping it. And yeah, it's a just value of physical objects, which is not only physical, but it carries, let's say, spiritual, intellectual, emotional value in it.
Does it make you sad, or maybe it's a bittersweet feeling? You probably share this with your students. You
I
share your
do.
memories, but something that they cannot experience.
But you know what? Things are not that horrible because I believe that excitement is contagious. And that's what I'm trying to bring out there, that contagion of wonderful sensory engagement with the world. And I do see curious spark in a lot of students' eyes. And I do think that something get triggered.
Because
So,
maybe they do feel deep on the inside that there is more to life than what they have now. And your job as a teacher, one of the most important jobs, is to remind them of that.
a lot of college students feel some sort of dissatisfaction, but they cannot define it. And I always bring simple example. It's like they have a craving for something, but they don't know what it is. But once you give that to them and they try it, they realize the taste, the beauty of it, and then they start making effort of finding it or surrounding themselves with something. The process is starting. So I'm trying as much as I can to provoke this process of, I call it awakening.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. You know, this is one of the most important things you can do for that generation, to get them to want to feel, well, they want to feel something, but to point them in the right direction. That's wonderful.
Trying to.
That's,
what are you trying to do around yourself?
you know, I'm walking down memory lane way too often. I walk around and I always miss the things that we used to have, you know, in the past, here or elsewhere where we lived. And I know it's not productive. It doesn't change the bottom line. The world changes, but a lot of places that I like are out of business, and I walk by the same streets and I always wonder, oh, it sucks that this place is gone and that place is gone and this is different, and that is different. So I'm trying to fight it off because it's not productive. It doesn't change the bottom line. But at the same time, these memories are fun to have and fun to think about.
But what are you doing in the present moment? Are you continuing trying to engage with people as you used to do before?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me address the issue of rejection. I'm a firm believer of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If somebody rejects me, I know they're probably not going to physically hurt me. Okay, so I will live. Also, I've developed a very strong ability to take criticism as a compliment. If someone attacks me constructively, not simply with empty insults, if somebody criticizes me, it's a compliment to me because I know they feel comfortable in this politically correct world. They feel comfortable sharing that with me because they know that I'll take it the right way. It's not going to be the end of the world. So I pride myself on being able to do it. I absolutely value in-person interactions very much. You know me, I'm not a fan of the restrictions, and part of it is that I refuse to give up on something so important unless I have a really, really, really big reason. So I try to preserve as many of the good things as we had that we don't have to give up from before. And yeah, that's, like you said, don't take it for granted. Anything can change, anything can be taken away. So not to take anything, even in-person conversations and disagreements, for granted.
Absolutely, it's part of the process. I mean, it's like a spicy food, right? Sometimes you need hot salsa, right? Or wasabi or chili peppers, right? You cannot just constantly feed yourself with caramel syrup.
And you know, we have no excuse not to be like that, because our father was known for getting super, super angry, attacking us, maybe beating us and whatever. And then a second later, it's like nothing happened. Are you ready to go? Are you ready to go out? It's like complete clean slate. Like how can someone switch so quickly from being so angry to like nothing ever happened, right?
Yeah.
So I think maybe it was in our blood to lean in that direction. I don't know.
Yeah. And to appreciate different modalities, different shifts. Yeah. So, and that's another thing for pro-human contact, because it allows us to explore multiple traces of, we are all complex individuals, right? It allows us explore complexity of another person, which is fascinating, intriguing, and it makes it a journey with each different person. And I do believe people will get to realize more and more, especially the younger generation, because there's no other way.
Yeah. If they feel that they're missing something, then they will have to do something about it. And, you know, just like piano, that takes many, many hours, many, many years to practice and become good at. The same is with communication. It takes many hours and much practice to become better at humor, to become better at arguing, at resolving conflicts, at approaching and flirting and making connections, right? It takes a lot of practice. And if people don't practice enough, they're not going to be good at it. And life is going to be much less fun.
But taking this practice as part of creative process, not as a duty, as a forceful order or prescription of sort.
Of course.
But as a creative process, and that's called life.
Yeah. And we don't want to see life being downgraded from being in person to being a video game. We don't want the whole life to be a video game.
Well, definitely so. Here I agree with you. Here is the rare case where I agree with you.
Let me mark this special moment. Let me mark this special moment.
Well,
in conclusion, I would like to say that I don't want video.
Arkady.
What happened?
Arkady?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm sorry, my headphones got disconnected, unplugged. I'm back again. What were you saying? What were you saying?
I was gonna say that I don't want virtual world to be the crutch that prevents us from walking on our own, meaning from seeing each other in person as often as we otherwise would. And as I expected, I would feel guilty. It's hard for me to avoid thinking that I owe you a few in-person visits, at least.
I just wanted to say that. Be the one to prove your words, right?
Yes, yes. No,
yes.
So I have some work to do in that. But you know, you mentioned laziness and people not putting enough effort when you have a convenient option, right? Which is certainly better than nothing. In conclusion, I want to say one thing. We should take more responsibility for our actions. We can use technology, we can use virtual world to our benefit by connecting, by doing a lot of wonderful things online. And it is our duty and it is our responsibility to make sure we don't neglect the real life. Too many people blame Facebook and Instagram for doing all kinds of bad things. We're doing the bad things. They're giving us the tools. We should pick and choose when and what to use and make the best out of both worlds. Each world has its place. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, dear brother, thank you very much. I hope we can continue our conversation. We should.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was just an appetizer, a spicy appetizer.
An entree is yet to come.
Entree, yeah, hors d'oeuvres. Okay, I wish you a wonderful evening, and
Likewise.
I'll see you soon, hopefully with a visit.
Absolutely.
Hold you accountable.
Accountable all the way through.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.